Welcome to the Growth Through Adversity podcast, where men are forged, not coddled. Here we dive deep into the path of true transformation in pursuit of physical, mental, spiritual, and temporal growth. We talk training, nutrition, business, mindset, and spirituality. We embrace strength and we loathe ease. We reject weakness in every form and cultivate power, the will to power itself. This is the rebirth of modern man. Raw masculinity, tempered by reason, virtue, and right action, because nothing of value is earned without sacrifice. Let's begin our apotheosis together. Welcome to another episode of the Growth Through Adversity podcast. I am here today with Dr. Cody Crockett, and we are going to be talking about all kinds of cool stuff in a 4-part mini-series. We've got 4 episodes planned, and we're going to kind of talk about biohacking and hormones and masculinity, and of course, a little bit of training and nutrition, and just get into some really cool stuff here over the course of the next 4 weeks. But Dr. Cody Crockett is a super smart dude. I've had some really good conversations with him. He's got a really accomplished life. He's done some pretty cool stuff, everything from like javelin throwing to bodybuilding, to like elite level skiing. So I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself and tell you who he is and tell you what he's about. And then we can kind of hop right into this. Cody, what's up, man?
How's it going, man? Appreciate you bringing me on here, getting me in front of the audience. We're going to have a great discussion today. Like you were saying, my background is I'm a doctor of physical therapy, executive health coach, peak performance coach. And from being an athlete to working in the clinic, doing research, all the way to now working with our Paralympic ski team, specifically our para-alpine division, working with professional athletes, business leaders. I've had the blessing of working with a large amount of high-level men and women to help them optimize peak performance, whether that is in business, in sports, athletics. And we can see, and I know we talk about this a lot, is how health is holistic. And by improving our health and dialing things in there, that trickles into other areas of life. And so by up-leveling your health, that up-levels your relationships, your business, and how you strive to achieve your goals in the world. And so I'm really excited for this conversation, Ragnar. I know there's a lot of nooks and crannies we can get into, and really focusing on even getting into the more edgy conversations of talking about men's content, masculinity, and the direction of the world. And hopefully, even if we help one person out there to pick up a golden nugget that can change their life, I think leaning into some of the discomfort of these conversations can be worth it.
Oh, so true, dude. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Even more than maybe worth it, I think it's super necessary because a lot of people are in the modern age that we live in are kind of just like shying away from all of that because it's not really a popular discussion. But that doesn't make it any less true or any less necessary. So yeah, I'm stoked. I like edgy. So we'll definitely have some fun and go down some rabbit holes. So like I said, we've kind of planned out 4 episodes here. And so we've got, a 4-part series here because it's a lot of content. I don't want to overwhelm people because it's a lot to digest. So I was thinking, we could start with something that you're kind of a specialist in. And I definitely am highly into too. And that's kind of like hormone optimization and like declining testosterone levels and just overall like biohacking, longevity, all of this cool stuff. Because like you just hit on the head, something that I'm a fervent believer in, and that is that fitness is never just physical. This translates into every other facet of your life. Like we're training to excel at life. It's discipline, it's delayed gratification. It's everything that's important to succeed, and anything else you do can be cultivated in the fucking gym and in your training. So, but we're in kind of one of those like weird ages right now where it's like, I mean, and you know a lot about this because you've got a whole series on this, and I think it's probably a good place to start, but testosterone levels, which if you want to talk about masculinity, I mean, testosterone is the hormone that drives masculinity. It is not just like masculine attributes, but it's drive, it's risk aversion. It's like everything that makes a man is pretty much driven by testosterone or dihydrotestosterone on some level. And over the last like 50 years, testosterone levels have been dropping 1% per year. And that's like terrifying to me. And I know you probably have a little more insight on the reasons behind that. So maybe we could start there. But if you think about the numbers, that's so just you and I, on average, or our generation has 30 to 40% less testosterone than our grandfathers did. And so maybe we could start right there, man. And you could give me some of your thoughts on that and we can kind of start talking about what's causing that and what we can do to fix that.
That's a great starting point. And yeah, you alluded to beginning with the stats, right? If we begin with the stats of what's been going on with testosterone and sperm motility in the last 50 years, and we've seen significant decreases in that men's testosterone has decreased by 50% in the last 50 years. And we can see how men and even women, there's these fertility issues now. And there's a big misunderstanding that testosterone is only for men. Yes, it's the masculinization hormone. It's, we're more familiar with it when it comes to men, but it is highly, extremely important for women. So any women listening to this podcast, that's a big myth, is thinking testosterone is limited to men. We all need testosterone. So we look at the stats on the last 50 years, what's been happening is there's this huge decline, this massive decrease. And we can see how over the last 50 years, over the last century, there's been this astonishing decrease in mental health, in life satisfaction. We've seen increases in disease, depression, despair, and even degeneration too, right? And so we can see how things have progressed in a negative way. It's almost like things have regressed. And my belief is that so much of this has happened because we have a lost connection with our primal human nature. And because of that, now that we're indoors, we have artificial lighting, we don't get to look outside, we're not getting fresh air, quality foods. These are all components that are leading to this decrease in testosterone. And we know, that testosterone, the effects that it has on our brain, not just our bone density, our muscles, our performance, but our cognition, our mood, how we perceive ourselves in the world. So it really is the master hormone. And it does seem, without going too far down the rabbit hole here, it almost seems like there's a narrative, a push to make testosterone bad and to demonize anything that makes someone more masculine or more of a leader or more disciplined or more of something, that a penetrating force that goes out and achieves things in the world. So there's been an attack on that pursuit of greatness, on building yourself up and creating a healthy body. And we can see that when men do take control of their hormones and even getting a baseline. So many guys don't have a baseline on where their hormones are. And just beginning with that and determining where you're at, and that's what I help guys do, is to determine what's this baseline. And then from there, there's so much low-hanging fruit that I know you talk about. And I know you've been through my free testosterone optimization course that I put out there. Yep. And how much of just implementing these very simple strategies can radically change somebody's health. So it doesn't have to be complicated, but the crisis is that it's not just on testosterone, but it's masculinity as a whole. And if something doesn't happen, we're going to see in the next 5, 10, 15 years that humans are literally unable to breed. We are unable to reproduce because we have seen this sterility and this lack of fertility just play out in a very terrible way. So if we don't change the direction that we're on right now, we are going to see a larger crisis of humanity.
Dude, that's so true. And that's terrifying to think about because we think about testosterone, I think, mostly at least a lot of the guys I deal with think about it in the sense of like the gym and the physical attributes and all of that kind of stuff. But you miss the whole process of the HPGA and how it is tied to sperm production, fertility. And with the crash of testosterone, we've also seen a crash in both the quality of sperm in men and the amount of sperm in men. So yeah, that's pretty spooky to think about. And I think you're totally right. We've seen and I would say it probably goes back all the way to at least when I start noticing it in my research, like it probably goes back to like the post World War II era, the 60s, where we began to see like a kind of feminization of society. And it was pretty slow at first because I think the 50s and the 40s were a pretty masculine era in the West, if you ask me. And then I do believe it's deteriorated. The 70s got progressively weirder, the 80s got weirder, the 90s got really weird, and now it's like it's night or day, and it is absolutely 100% an attack on masculinity, and testosterone is just one of the victims to fall there. But I don't really see, and I think that really came up with like the toxic masculine. That was a hilarious fucking craze that they had for a while there. I don't hear it as much now, but it's like evolved into other weird like subgenres. And I've never seen masculinity as toxic, although I do kind of like their framing because it points out a lot of the good attributes of masculinity as bad and just kind of shows you how far society has decayed, I guess. But I mean, masculinity in at its root is the provider, the protector, it's discipline, it's putting yourself second. You know what I mean? Like it is a very positive and necessary thing, and I think it is what's driven the West to the powerhouse that it is today, and it's why we're seeing things begin to deteriorate, unfortunately. But I wanted to kind of touch on a couple of those. So definitely like, and again, I'm not as well versed in and as researched in this as you are, but I've read quite a bit and I went through your course and I gained a lot of information there. But it seems like some of what's contributing maybe to the testosterone decline, other than just probably like cultural things. I mean, I think like, so I know like I get my testosterone tested. And that was a super good point, by the way. That's like whenever I have guys that join the program and they're like, wondering why they're not making more progress or why they feel that's like one of the first places I point them. It's like, one, how's your sleep? You know what I mean? How many hours are you sleeping a night? How's your nutrition? Are you following the diet? Are you following your macros? And if those two things are in line, it's like, okay, go get your hormones tested because that'll tell us the rest. But I know on my tests, like they can fluctuate dramatically. You know what I mean? Like hundreds of nanograms to deciliter in one direction or another. And I know that like if you talk to a beautiful woman, like your testosterone can spike. And then if you are fighting with your old lady, it can crash. So there's obviously like environmental. So I think a lot, like part of it's definitely we didn't evolve to live in tiny little cities where we're all packed together with millions of human beings, where we don't know anybody. We evolved in like small nomadic, primitive hunting and gathering bands where you knew maybe 100 or 50 people in your life, but you knew them intimately. And then you had like your smaller institutions of like the hunting band that you went out with every day. And that's like just totally missing. If you see millions of people every day, but you don't know any of them anymore. And we didn't evolve for that. We didn't evolve to not be in nature. We didn't evolve to not struggle and not be tested. So that's for sure part of it. But then like people don't sleep anymore and like LH pulse frequency goes down if you don't. So if your pituitary gland's not releasing luteinizing hormone, it's not communicating with your testicles and telling them to produce sperm and testosterone. But then it's like, microplastics. They're finding them in male testicles, which are supposed to be protected by basically the equivalent of like a blood barrier, a blood brain barrier for your sex organs, right? But there's nanoplastics and microplastics that are making it inside of our sex organs. We're chronically stressed. We have high cortisol, which suppresses testosterone because, again, we're living how we didn't really evolve to live. We're sedentary on average. You know what I mean? Most people don't really work out and are definitely aren't active like we were in our primal days. And then obesity, which the aromatase enzyme thrives in fat tissue. So you're having a higher conversion to estrogen. And it does seem like there's an agenda behind that. You know what I mean? And I'm not like a huge conspiracy theory guy, but just the fact that there's all of these things and they're all like highly encouraged at a societal level is bizarre to me. So maybe you could tell us a little more about some of those things because I know you're really well versed in all that shit.
Yeah, and I hate to go on the conspiracy route because, it can get
It's
a bit
weird.
gray. But at the same time, if you look fact for fact, what's pushed? I mean, we got pills, we got procedures that are pushed as solutions. Then physician school, they don't learn anything about nutrition. It's RFK mentioned recently that let's make nutrition a mandatory course of the curriculum for physicians because there's such lack of information when it comes to actual nutrition. If you look at the lobbyists who pay the money to promote certain foods and the food pyramid. So if you follow the money and if you look at what's demonized, and now we have a society where we're now rewarding people for being fat. It's like telling people that being fat is okay, that is healthy, and it's just flat out bullshit.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how can we be gaslit and told that neglecting your nutrition, sleep doesn't matter. You can be on TikTok scrolling all night. You don't have to go to the gym because the gym is just for, the far right, the bros.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. Like,
Yeah.
it's just flat out bullshit. So, yeah, in the microplastics, I mean, that's a huge thing too. Is like, I did a piece of content a while ago looking at
Fantastic.
the research on the testicle microplastics that they're finding, and they're finding it in ovaries, breast milk. So this has invaded us, and you cannot outwork, or you cannot out eat, you cannot out sleep a shitty diet full of microplastics. There's just no way around it. You have to eliminate that stuff. And that's why in my free testosterone course, that's number one, is to eliminate. And just through elimination, you can get so much farther ahead. And it's like, for somebody that's overweight, by eliminating food for a period of time can be your biggest bang for your buck when it comes to actually getting a grasp on your health. But these are things that you're not going to hear from the mainstream. They don't make money off of it. They're making money off of pills and procedures. So to that point, you look at, we're not going to get this education. And it's fortunate now that people like you, like me, we have access to internet, to resources where we can get in front of the right people and connect with people and get answers, rather than going through the gatekeepers of the institutions of schooling, where you have to pay to go to their school so that they can tell you the knowledge that they want you to know, even though it's, you know. So without going too far down that direction, I want to touch back on something that you mentioned on how this all seemed to begun back in the after the war, after World War II.
Yep.
And the cycle of hard times create strong men create good times create weak men,
Love that
weak men
quote.
create hard
Yeah.
times. And that's that cycle, right? So if we look back at that time, we were coming out of a war, a hard time. So hard time created these strong men, which created great times, good times. We had the baby boom after that, right?
Yep.
And then from there, we can see how things were good. And now from there, we see that decline, and we created weak men, and then the rise of feminization. And now we're on what, third wave feminism now. And it's is optimistic for me to see the pendulum start to swing back, and how we realize that having strong men with high testosterone levels is good for both men and women and families and society as a whole. So it's not just masculinity is toxic and this is taking away from women. No, it's absolutely not that. And it's that men want to be strong men, to be around other strong men they can depend on, that they can respect. Women want a man that can be strong, that can provide, that can have provisions, that can protect her. So it behooves everyone in society as a whole to have strong men. But who it doesn't support is people that are looking to control through other means, that have other agendas, whether it's control, power, money, whatever that may be. That's where you have to question, what is their motive and why don't they want strong men? So I think we get into that in a different episode in the series that we're going to do.
Yeah.
But I just want to point back to that, because that cycle, that's something that we see continually. And I can see it, how it's shifted over even the last 5 to 10 years. And it's an ongoing thing. So,
Totally.
yeah. And I
Totally.
think
Oh,
now is
go
the
ahead.
time that we need to, now is the time that things need to change, and that we see the pendulum start to swing back. And there might be a bit of an overcorrection, but it does give me hope to see that things are moving in I guess the veil is being lifted and people are starting to open their eyes.
That
Which gives me hope.
I think that the beauty of that is, like you said, there's obviously social media and the internet it's an easy target and it has plenty of downfalls. Mostly that it's like totally unvetted information, right? So anybody can say anything and there's virtually no consequences or accountability for it. So obviously that can be a problem, but obviously with the freedom of speech thing, that can be a fucking awesome thing, because like you said, we have zero faith in the institutions that govern our health, and we have a totally financial based corrective medical system, right? We have all this amazing technology. We have all this potential, right? And we're on like the cutting edge of research, especially with AI and the things that it can do and compute. But we're so hyper focused on medicine as a business, and in order for medicine to be a profitable business, people have to be fucked off and sick. So it's not based on like preventative care, it's based on how efficiently can we just like saw shit off and replace it and give you all these medications and then have other medications to deal with the side effects of that medication. And you get to the point where like I know people that are like, they can't, they've got buckets literally of fucking pills that they're taking. Like they have to throw a 5 gallon bucket to throw their empty pill bottles out. And that's not helpful or constructive at all. So it's good that there's this free information out there and people are starting to awaken to it. It takes a little bit of time, but I do agree with you. And then kind of like what you were talking about, that cycle that of society is that kind of reminds me of they talked about that in like ancient mythology, where it's like societies go through this like golden age where they're born and then, things deteriorate. And then there's, this great catastrophe, but then there's rebirth after that. So I think that was like them making sense of what you're talking about, that there's societies are constantly going through this cyclic process of growth and then decay and of entropy and then rebirth. And that we will definitely talk about in the initiation episode, because that pulls right into all that stuff. But so you talked about and I just want to circle back. I won't spend a lot of time, but prevention. So I try, right? But that is fucking difficult, man. So I drink out of a metal vessel, right? But it has a plastic lid because everything has a plastic lid. So, but I feel like and it's like, it's hard plastic. And I feel like maybe it's a little better. And the vessel's metal. That's what I drink my water out of every day. I use the glass to store my food. So I feel like I try, but it's so everything comes in plastic, right? And I don't heat plastic up in the microwave. So I take some pretty basic steps, which I feel like is kind of all you can do without going like totally fucking gung ho and like, living in the woods and only eating off of wood and just not having any plastics around you. But so clothing, it's in clothing, it's in, the underwear we wear. It's insidious. Prevention, like just maybe like just three key things that people can do to reduce the absorption of microplastics that you would recommend as like the three first basic steps.
Yeah, that's great. So first off, it's looking at what are you putting in your body? So what are you eating? Are you getting, like you alluded to, the drinks? Are you drinking out of plastic? So you want to completely eliminate any sort of plastic containers that you're using, whether that's to drink out of, whether that's to store your food in. Especially if you're putting hot food or hot drink in a plastic container, that shit's going to leach. It's going to get into that, and you're going to consume that, and then it's going to be in your body, and that it's tough to get rid of that stuff.
Yep.
So that's number one. And then looking at what are the things that you're putting on your body. So there's very sinister things that are in our products, our body care products, that we don't even think about. I mean, these toxic chemicals that they may make things look pretty and smell good, but it's actually taking a pretty big toll on your body. So when we're looking at body care products, using things that are free of phthalates, BPA, parabens, choosing products that are absent of these chemicals. And this is like deodorants, body wash, hand soaps, shampoo. These are all really important things. So we want to avoid the things that we put on our skin. And then the third thing I would say then is looking at your clothing. So if you look at what is the most common clothing worn when we're working out, like fitness gear, it's mostly that polyester sort of spandex, artificial fabrics, synthetic fabrics. And those are the things that have the highest levels of microplastics. And if you look at when somebody uses those products, it's when their body temperature's up, it's when all their pores are open, and when their body is absorbing things more readily. So yeah, we live in this world where my keyboard's made out of plastic, my pen that I have here is plastic, my mouse, everything that I'm touching it's like plastic, but what is the biggest bang that I can do to reduce this? So what's the 20% that I can do to get that 80% result? And that is through our drinking, through the things that we're actually putting on our skin. And then what are the things that we have in contact with our body? So it may not be all the time where if I go outside here in Alaska and it's 30 degrees below, I might need a synthetic layer of clothing that I'm going to use to save my life and protect me.
Sure.
And Also, it's going to be so cold that my body is not going to be very receptive to that.
Ah, that makes sense.
Where if I wear that in the gym where I'm sweating and I have underwear on that has microplastics in it, polyester underwear in the gym, and now my body temperature's up, my testicles are nice and hot, and they're going to be absorbing that shit. That's the worst time you want to be doing that. But yet, that's when these clothings are marketed the most. So just understanding and being able to make intelligent decisions because this shit is everywhere. But just because it's everywhere, like even when you go to check out at the store that give you a receipt, I refuse to touch receipts. So that thermal paper over time, same idea. So people look at me like I'm crazy, but as I've gotten older, they look at me and they're like, "What the fuck are you doing that you can still have a six pack and be where you are?" And it's like you don't even try. It's because I'm so dialed in, and I know what the big levers are that we can move, and by being consistently aligned with that, and being aligned with that true human nature that we talk about, that's where we can really play the game of peak performance and longevity and really keep everything dialed in. And I don't know, you see that in a lot of clients that you work with as people age, as they get older. Uh, those people that stay committed and disciplined and consistent, those are the ones that see the results rather than the people that do it for a period of time. They fall off or they give up and think that these little things don't matter, but these little things do make a big difference. So I know that was a long-winded answer for the three key things, but I just
No, it was perfect. It was perfect because I always forget about the receipts thing. I'm bad about that because everything running a business, you know how that goes. Everything's a fucking expense. I'd rather the money go to back into the business in any way than to the fucking IRS to go fund like studies on transgender butterflies in Iran or some shit. But that's a discussion for a whole nother day. But so I'm bad about the receipts, but all right, that's good information. And absolutely, dude, like what I've seen with clients is it's the people that commit. And so I've always got in the app that I use, there's a compliance score, and there it's, you know, weekly, monthly, and over the last 3 months. And when you see a 90 or 100% there, those are the clients that are like, you know, becoming my before and after photos. And then the ones that create those habits and patterns and stick with it over time, it's like you said, like this is fitness is delayed gratification. It's you don't build a body like you've got or like I've got in a year. You know what I mean? You don't build it in 5 years. This is something that I've personally been working on since I was probably 15 years old. And I've been really working on very hard since my late teens. And I'm 36 now. So it's something that you have to commit to. And I feel like by the time I'm 45, I'm going to look even better and I'm going to feel even better because it's something that just gets better with time. But you're right, you have to be consistent. I've noticed that in your training, and I think there's one later where we'll talk a little bit more about training, but I'll just touch. I noticed that in your training, you're very efficient. Like you come into the gym and you're usually not there for longer than like an hour, but you train really hard and you move heavy weights, but with very good mechanics. And you do some really weird moves sometimes where you like blend some Olympic and some crazy stuff. But it's very effective and it's very efficient. And I think a lot of people don't realize that like you don't necessarily, and I believe you have a physique that many would aspire to, and you don't necessarily have to spend 2 hours a day, 6 days a week in the gym to get like that. You know, a lot of bodybuilders do that. You just have to go in, you know, a few times a week and train really fucking hard and then control everything else outside of the gym. You know, you're always hiking, you're always doing other athletic stuff, and it all kind of accumulates into where you're trying to get, right? And so yeah, no, that totally makes sense. If you're good with it, let's transition. And I know it's kind of a jump. Well, okay, so actually, since we're just kind of wrapping up the testosterone thing here, so obviously TRT is getting bigger and bigger today, right? And I have tons of clients that ask me about it, a few of them that are on it, and some of them that like legitimately need it, were like legitimately hypogonadal and tried the natural path and just could not fucking get above like 200 or 300 nanograms to deciliter. And I think it's great in those circumstances, right? If there's just like, but I don't think it should be your first, like the first thing that you jump to, because obviously the downside is it totally shuts down your natural production, your HPGA, totally kills your fertility. So if you're trying to have kids, probably not going to happen because, like you said, we're already not great fertility wise to start in this generation, and then that just knocks it down further. And then it can have some other like cardiovascular and some other side effects, right? So you know, and like the first thing I always tell people is like, so testosterone is produced at night when you're sleeping, in deep sleep specifically. So, like, if you're sleeping 4 hours a night, of course your fucking testosterone sucks. It also is boosted by just heavy resistance training, right? So, and then good nutrition. So those are like the three pillars that I always stress people to like start with those. Like, don't go for the magical supplements. Start with the basics, like get 8 hours of sleep a night, lift weights 3 or 4 times a week, and eat a good high protein diet. Um, After that, like I know you, and obviously there's a whole testosterone course. We can link that in the notes if you still have that up for as a free thing. It's fucking fantastic. I went through it. But so obviously, like you don't have to give all your secrets away, but just kind of like the basics, like 101, man, on guys that want to boost their testosterone naturally, but don't really know where to start. Where would you recommend? Just some basics there.
That's great. Yeah. So I'll begin with this. So my business is called Primal Prescriptions, Primal RX. And the reason for that is because I've seen that so many men can undo metabolic syndrome, that they can boost testosterone, that they can get a great physical physique just by changing how they eat, how they move, and how they sleep. And I wrote a book on that. And that right there, through optimizing how you eat, move, and sleep in alignment with nature, that will take care of the majority of our health issues, mentally, physically, emotionally, and possibly even spiritually. Different conversation.
Yep.
Now, if we look at that and if we just align ourselves with how we would be in nature, and just like if we were going to create a zoo exhibit for a lion, you want to create a zoo exhibit for yourself. This means that you're going to be getting a sufficient dose of sunlight. So, managing your light exposure. You're not staying up late. You're not scrolling, getting blue light when you're not supposed to get blue light. When the sun goes down, you should be decreasing your light exposure, making things more red. I mean, you can see in the background here, I have red light therapy strips all through here.
Awesome.
So, managing your light exposure, and that plays into getting outside, and that tunes your circadian rhythm, which helps you sleep. And we need that sleep in a cold, quiet, calm environment where we can get at least 7 to 9 hours. And like you said, that's when testosterone's made. That's when growth hormone's released. So if your sleep is shit, well, your testosterone is going to be pathetic too. And there's some interesting things when it comes to breathing. And guys that have sleep apnea tend to have significantly lower levels of testosterone.
Huh.
So if you're overweight and you're not breathing effectively at night, if you're not breathing through your nose, you're going to see sleep apnea occur, and this is going to significantly decrease a man's testosterone. So we can look at it through sleeping. We can look at it through the lens of the eating. I mean, you hate to beat the dead horse because this is all stuff that it's pretty counterintuitive stuff, but eating good quality foods, real foods, getting enough protein, filling in the rest with your fats, your carbs. I like to do deep dives into blood work and genetic testing with the clients that I work with because this helps us to curate exactly what's best for them. But for most people, just eating real good quality foods and getting enough protein. A big myth, a big misunderstanding that's been pushed is that eating fat is bad or eating cholesterol is bad. Guys, that's straight up bullshit. We need we need cholesterol to make our testosterone. If you're not getting fat, if you're not getting cholesterol, you don't have the building blocks to synthesize your hormones. So, making sure you get plenty of quality fat, not being afraid of cholesterol. This is going to all help you with your nutrition, making sure that you have enough protein in place to cause protein synthesis and grow your muscles. So we covered our sleep, we covered our movement, and or what we call our nutrition, and then we covered our movement would be the final one, which is exerting yourself, lifting heavy. When we lift heavy and you exert yourself, whether this is lifting heavy with, say, deadlift or any compound movements, or just going out and sprinting, the effects that has on the nervous system is a big part of why testosterone is released. So it comes down to your resistance training should be focused on exerting yourself, effort. If you're just going into the gym, piddle paddling around with single joint exercises, tricep extensions, forearms, you're not going to get that minimum threshold that you need to get your body to produce and release testosterone. So it can be very simple. Dialing in your training, your movement, your light exposure, getting good quality sleep, hydration. It seems very simple, but if a person actually does an audit of their lifestyle and their habits on a daily basis, they're going to see that they're mostly missing the mark in most of these areas. So it seems simple, but are people actually doing it? Instead, they're looking for the quick fix. They're looking for the supplement. They're looking for the medication instead of taking responsibility for themselves and actually being empowered to take these actions. They're looking for somebody else to do it. this isn't necessarily our clients, but in a world that's trying to get people to not take action or to feel like they don't need to take responsibility and to be dependent on institutions or government or whatever it may be, the biggest thing a person can do to stay sovereign and to stay free is to optimize their health. If you're healthy, they can't sell you anything to fix your health because you're already healthy. You're already fit. So by building a strong body, a fit body, being healthy, not taking medications, this is the biggest way that a person can take control of their health. And in a way to say, fuck the system, because they can't tax your six pack. They can't take this stuff away from you. And you don't make the money if you're healthy and you look good. So that's what I got to say about that.
Awesome. Absolutely. And those are all like, I would say universal. I would say those are like universal pillars for just overall wellness. Like, obviously I don't, frame it with the exact same language as you do, but the more time I spend in nature, and I get up every morning at 4:30 and I take the dog for a walk and we walk through the woods just to start the day, you know what I mean? Before I start fucking with phones and business and any of that kind of shit. And the more time I spend in nature, and obviously I lift every week. I very rarely miss a lift. And the more that I invest in that kind of stuff, the better everything else is in my life. Like obviously my health is better, but my relationships are better. I'm a better leader. I'm a better husband. I'm just more grounded. I'm more in touch with, like you said, my primal roots, where I come from, who I am, what I'm supposed to be doing. So all of that stuff, and you hit on spiritual health earlier, and 100%, I believe it does. There is such an intimate tie between nature and our spirit because we evolved in nature. You know what I mean? Like we be understood the deeper, like that there's more to life and that there's mysteries in this universe, whatever you want to call them. We became spiritual as being a part of nature. So it's heavily tied to us. And the more separate that we become from it, the more lost we become as a species, I believe. So that was awesome. And that was good stuff, man. So let's talk about, and we'll go over this real quick. This is the end of this one here. Peptides, man. So this is kind of something that's pretty new to me over the last few years. And they're getting a lot bigger, it seems like. And the government seems to hate them because they keep banning them on the FDA level. They'll approve them for a little while and then they'll ban them again, which kind of makes me even more curious about them and even more inclined to believe that they're probably legit. So I know that peptides are short chains of different amino acids that are like biologically active signaling molecules. So they go into your body and they tell your DNA to do something, or they tell a certain component of your body to do something. And I know that they're very precise in what they do. And they, you've got everything from ones that, help your body secrete more growth hormone. You've got like the recovery peptides, which I'm absolutely fascinated by and have had some excellent results with. Like those are the BPC 157 and the TB 500. And then there's all kinds of other weird, they go down some weird stuff. And I haven't really like gone down all the rabbit holes, but what are your thoughts on peptides and just kind of everything in that direction, biohacking wise, and where that's going? And are you interested in it? Do you think it's legit? I'm just curious.
I definitely dabble with the peptides,
Cool.
the biohacking aspect of it. And it is a broad topic, and I like to keep it as simple as possible. I mean, beginning with what's the most practical, and the way I look at it is healing, right? So I think we talked about previous injuries. I've had some previous injuries. I've used BPC 157. I've used TB 500, also Tesamorelin as well. And these all work together. They have different mechanisms, but they all help the body to heal faster. And yeah, it is interesting when you look at the FDA, you look at the institutions looking to regulate things. And if they go back and forth, to me, that sends up a red flag of let's look a little closer here and see what are these things doing and why are they on the banned list and then why are they off? I understand when it comes to sports and competitive organizations. I mean, I work with professional athletes where I have to really honor that, and
Sure.
I take that really seriously. But when it comes to somebody like me, I'm no longer competing under any organizational, regulations. So I'm going to utilize these things with what I feel is the right dose for me based
Mm.
off of what I see to preserve the quality of my tissue so that I can heal faster. And if you look at not just the healing benefits of what this does to injuries, but what this does to systemic inflammation in the body or even the brain. And I could give cases of different patients or different clients of mine that have had very unique experiences beyond just the healing benefits of using something like BPC 157. Now, is it a blanket for everyone? No, it's like if somebody's extremely overweight and they don't have the foundation of how you're eating, moving, and sleeping dialed in, then no, you're not going to be ready for the peptides. I look at something like the peptides as this is more of like this is level two of once you've mastered your foundation and you have a game plan for optimizing that, then you can bring in some of these peptides. But people that are looking for peptides again as that quick solution, they're pissing away their money because if you're taking a peptide such as something that interacts with growth hormone and blood sugar, and you take that at the wrong time, your peptide is completely ineffective. And we could go deeper into that, but I want to keep it kind of surface level with this. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of peptides that are being used kind of recklessly and as a quick fix, but there are side effects to some of these that haven't quite been talked about or that we don't quite know. So I dabble with the peptides. There's some really cool things that you can do with them for healing, for performance, for cognition. But I don't look at those as the first line to get somebody to optimize things. It's just like using light exposure. It's red light therapy, infrared light therapy. There's a place for it where we can use that to biohack, say using that on the testicles to increase testosterone. But that's not going to be the first line of, that's not a solution for you going out and getting sunlight. Or that's not a solution for avoiding optimizing how you eat, move, and sleep. You have to begin with that foundation, and then you can start to layer on some of those ingredients that are going to push you even further towards that top, say, 10%, 5%, 3% of performance or longevity or just health and aesthetics as a whole. They can help push the needle further, but you have to optimize with the foundational aspects first.
Definitely. And that's kind of always been, and when you think about, like we talked earlier about follow the money. And so something like if we just super simplify this, something like BPC 157, TB 500, which definitely help you recover faster. And they definitely help you recover better as well, with less scar tissue and less likelihood of re-injury is what I found, which is awesome because that fucking sucks. Once you have something injured, it's a weak point always, especially for athletes. But like imagine the implications of if this becomes something that's refined and optimized over time. I mean, you're cutting out orthopedic surgeons. You know, if you get something that where a few months of an injection can do the same thing that, you know, a $200,000 orthopedic surgery can do, you know, there's a trickle to that in that impacts big pharma, that impacts just the overall like medical industry as a business in whole. So it's no surprise that they're trying to delay this and slow these down. I don't think it can be stopped. It's eventually going to be a part of our treatment protocols in the next, 5 years or so, but they definitely don't want to rush that through. But I totally agree with you too on that. These are like 90% of the work is just done with the fundamentals. You know what I mean? If your training has to be on point, your nutrition has to be on point, your lifestyle has to be on point. You have to be controlling your alcohol intake, very careful with everything else that you do. And then these little things can make a massive, what translates into a massive difference. But if everything else is fucked off, there's no quick fix. You know what I mean? And peptides aren't going to be magical. I've been pretty careful with them. I pretty much just went the BPC 157 and TB 500 just because you kind of hit it right on the head. And I think it's worth mentioning that these are still relatively experimental. So we don't know exactly we have a good idea of what the short-term side effects are. And there are some for some of them. I don't think BPC 157 or TB 500 has anything really worth noting that's came up short-term, but we don't know exactly what long-term side effects are. Right. And that's something that we're going to figure out over time. But like when you're playing with something that causes the secretion of growth hormone, well, growth hormone causes things to grow. So is this like systemic growth hormone? Are we going to start growing, IGF? Are we going to start growing our organs, having hypertrophy in our heart and our organs? And that's obviously something that we don't want. So there's definitely, you want to be responsible with these kind of things. And you want to be kind of aware of possible risks and side effects. But I do think that there is a ton of promise in them, and I've had some really amazing results with especially the recovery ones myself. Um, so honestly, man, we could probably go down this rabbit hole for another hour, but I really want to wrap this one up so that we can kind of both get on into the next one. If that's good with you, we can kind of just stop there and maybe we can do a part two of this in the future.
Yeah, man, I'm good with that. It's
All
like
right.
you keep rolling with it, but let's, yeah, we can keep moving and grooving.
All right, let's keep moving and grooving.